Right, colour saturation. If you shoot JPEGs normally, whether it's with a point and shoot camera or a DSLR, you're probably used to having the images coming out fairly sharp and well saturated, and the colour contrast is okay. This is because the camera does all of that work in-house. It does it before it even records the JPEG. So when you move over to RAW, you might sometimes notice that you get a colour cast, the saturation's a bit bland, or their images are a bit softer. And that's because the raw image, or the raw capture, is it doing just that. It's just capturing the raw scene, albeit a lot more information, but it's basically going to give you a blander shot because it's not making any adjustments within the camera. So with a raw image you might have to do some work, and you can see on this image here, taken in a rural village in the summertime in England, and this was actually a very colourful scene, and this raw image isn't quite depicting it as I remember. So it needs a little bit of work doing to it, and one of those things is colour saturation. But I'm just going to quickly make a few minor adjustments just to show you how to make an image really pop, because this should be the kind of image that you see on a chocolate box, but at the moment it's got a little bit of a yellow cast, and the colours aren't really popping like I remember them, like the yellows of the daffodils and the red of the car and the blue sky. So let's just quickly work on that. We're in Canon's DPP at the moment, Digital Photo Professional. I'm also going to use this do this in Lightroom 2 in a minute, so for those of you that don't use Canon, you can see how to do it in Lightroom. So first of all, let's go into the RAW setting in Canon, and I'm just going to adjust the white balance very slightly. I'm just going to bring the colour temperature slightly down. It's a warmish looking image, but we can bring that back in a second when we come to doing the colour saturation. So I'm just bringing that back and knocking all the colours back by reducing the colour temperature. You can see there it's gone a little bit duller, which I'm not too displeased with. That's fine. So we'll leave it at that for now, and we're going to leave the saturation on 0. So let's try 1. I'm going to move the colour saturation here up 1 point. If you do it too much, it goes a bit heavy, you can see there. So let's just do 1 for now, leave the sharpness as it is, and then we're going to go into the RGB channels. Actually, while we're back in the RAW, I'm just going to adjust the brightness very slightly just to add a bit of contrast. Now we're in RGB, let's just move these sliders over very slightly to increase the brightness again, and then we're going to increase the sharpness a touch, and then here with the colour saturation slider I'm going to bring it up until the image looks pretty good. Now I'm concentrating on the blue sky, the red car, the yellow daffodils and the greens, just to make sure that we get to a point where the image doesn't look oversaturated like that, but we want it looking as though it would be a nice image, maybe a stock image for someone to use for a candy box, chocolate box, whatever. And I think it's somewhere around there. That's not bad, so we'll leave it at that. You can see that the image now has got a lot better than it was originally, with the colours really standing out, really popping. And if I wanted to continue that, I could take it into Photoshop and use the brush tool, set to saturation with a feathered brush with about 3% saturation rate, and then just go over the bits that I really want to bring out or enhance even more. Maybe like the greens at the front here, the reflection of the blue in the water. But for now, if I revert this right back to how it was, you can see the difference it's made. So that's just a very quick and simple way to increase the saturation in Digital Photo Professional. We're now going to go into Lightroom and show you how to do it there. Okay, so here's that same image in Lightroom 2. I'm going to do pretty much the same as I did in Canon's DPP. So if you have Lightroom and you're using Nikon or Olympus or Sony, then this is kind of how you could work on the image here. And of course there's many different ways of doing it. This is just a very quick and simple way to kind of increase the colour saturation. And there's a lot more choices in Lightroom. So first of all, I'm going to use the temperature chart here again, just to bring the temperature down ever so slightly to about there. Just knock back the colours and hopefully get rid of a little bit of the colour cast. Then I'm going to just very slightly increase the exposure, being careful not to blow out the highlights on this wall here. And then just increase the blacks to increase the contrast a touch. You can see it just went a bit darker under here. And then you've got 3 here under the presence title or heading. And you've got clarity, vibrance and saturation. Now really the ones I use are vibrance and saturation. So let's just increase the vibrance ever so slightly. In fact, let's raise it right up so you can see what difference it makes. That's well oversaturated, so let's just bring that back to normal and then just bring it up slowly and just make some minor adjustments to about there. And then saturation, if we take it right up, you can see disgusting. So let's bring that back and then just increase it ever so slightly to about there. And you can see once again we've got the image looking a lot more colourful, it pops a lot more, and it's a lot more kind of saleable, or it look better in a print. We've got a bluer sky, the red's better, the greens and the yellows are all better. So it's very, very simple, very minor adjustments, and it is done to taste. I like kind of saturated images for really bright, bold and colourful. You may be slightly different, so if you don't like them quite as colourful, then obviously don't make the adjustments quite as much. But just if you see an image it looks fairly bland, just work on the saturation in very, very small amounts and don't oversaturate an image. But those are two really simple ways in Canon's DPP and Lightroom 2, just to show you how to take an image and add a little bit of colour using the saturation tools. So to just finish off, let's now show you this quickly in Photoshop. This is a JPEG taken from the original RAW, and again you can see the colours are fairly bland. So I'm just going to very, very quickly work on this, just again show you how to get the colour saturation up. First of all, I'm going to remove the colour cast. There's another video on this in a second, but all I do is go to Adjustments, Colour Balance, and then we've got the three sliders here, the cyan red, magenta green and yellow blue. I'm just going to take the cyan red slider over to the left, ever so slightly, while working on the midtones by the way, and bring the blue slider up to increase the blue slightly, and put to about there. And then I'm going to go to the highlights and do the same thing, take the red off slightly and the blue up slightly. So if I do the preview before and after, you can see we've got rid of that colour cast but leaving the natural colours behind. We'll add some warmth, or you can add warmth using filters and things later on, but if I leave that for now, we've now got the natural colour showing, but it's albeit a little bit dull. There's two ways of adding, or there's two ways I use of adding saturation in Photoshop. One of them is to go to Image, Adjustments, and then where are you? Hue Saturation. And you can just increase the saturation here to however you want it. Let's have a look. There you go. You can just increase the saturation to add as much colour as you like on the whole image. Now what I'm going to do is just increase it very, very slightly to about 4. Now let's have a look. It's a bit more. Let's go to about 5. And leave that one there. And then what I'm going to do is basically go to use the where are you? The sponge tool here, and I'm going to set it to saturate and flow at around 4%. And I'm going to decrease the size of that brush slightly to about there. Now what this will then do is slowly paste on saturation to the parts where I want to keep it quite heavy, and it won't touch the other parts of the image. If I'm just using the saturation slider, it's going to saturate the entire image, and some bits may get overdone if you like. So using this brush, I've now got a feathered brush. You can see up here it's a feathered brush with a fairly large size, but make sure it's on saturate and not desaturate, and keep the flow around 4%. That's really, really low. So if we now just start left clicking and painting over the bits I want to increase saturation on, which is this green bit at the front, and then maybe the blue reflection in the water, maybe a bit on the house. House doesn't really need it. Maybe the colours of the brickwork on the house could do with coming up a bit. Touch on the car, it's already red enough. A little bit on this on the side here to add a bit of a golden glow, and then obviously you've got the sky, which we can saturate a bit to make it look really blue. Let's have a look. It takes a bit of that kind of yellowy brown edge off it. So maybe about there. Let's give it one more click. You don't want to overdo it. If you overdo it, you can always revert, obviously, but let's have the sky to about there. Now, I've kind of, these tops here have gone a bit over the top, so if I'm going to go back to desaturate, decrease the size of the brush and just go over those, just to bring those down a little bit, and I think that's pretty good. So you can see there, very quick adjustments using the brush and a very slight adjustment on the slider, and we've got a really cracking looking image, and I'd be pretty happy with that. In fact, I'll probably upload that for stock, just get rid of things like the number plate on the car. So let's go back to the original. Let's revert that, show you the original, which is there. I've cropped it slightly as well and turned it, but you can see that's the original colours, and if we go to do that, you can see the sky's much bluer, the greens are greener, everything's standing out, and it looks like a much better image. So again, just follow those rules if you like to adjust the colour saturation. Try them either in DPP, in Lightroom 2 or in Photoshop. They're all pretty good. My favourite is actually that one in Photoshop. It looks just about right for me. So just use either of those and use it to your own personal taste, and don't overdo the saturation.